Okay, good morning. Good to see you. Last week we approached possible definitions of music. We talked about the functions of music. Today we're going to focus on the raw material of music, which is sound. But before talking about sound, perhaps we should start off by talking about the opposite, talking about silence. I want to start off with a very simple activity. I want us to close our eyes for just 30 seconds. I want you to listen carefully, and I want you to think about the sounds that surround us, okay? What sounds can you identify? Okay, so you can keep your eyes closed or just listen attentively for 30 seconds and tell me what sources of sounds you can identify. Okay, you can just call out whatever you have identified.
The family, in the outdoors.
Yeah, in the corridors we have noise. Yeah, people chattering outside. What else?
The sound of the computer.
Yeah, the ventilation system from the projector.
I don't know. Our I don't know the meaning. Respiración.
Yeah, the sounds we're making ourselves. Our breathing and any other sounds we're actually making.
Our heart is.
Our heart beating. Maybe you have listened to your own heart beating. We have heard footsteps. Okay, so we're surrounded by sound. There have been many composers that have paid special attention to sound and silence. But in particular, American composer John Cage had very interesting ideas concerning silence. I want you to listen to the beginning of one of his most famous pieces, which is called 433.
And now, a performance of John Cage's 433. Please welcome our soloist, William Marks.
So that's our performer, our pianist is getting ready. He has his music there. And he's about to play the first movement. Okay, don't expect much more from this piece. This is 4 minutes and 33 seconds of absolute silence. Or are we having real silence here? What do you think? Do you think it's possible to have silence?
No. And
Why not, Alejandro?
Because we know for a fact that if we put ourselves in a quiet room, like with special walls, no sounds are available to enter the place, we will still hearing our stomach, our body moving, and it's impossible to have silence. And
right.
I think that the key of this piece of music
Yes.
is that every time you play this piece of music,
Right.
you have different possibilities of sounds in the
environment.
environment.
Right, so thank you, Alejandro, because that's precisely what John Cage thought. You can't have absolute silence. The actual audience, you in this case, or the people that are in the audience watching this this piece, listening to this piece, they're actually producing the sound, and every time it's going to be different. Do you agree with what Alejandro said concerning the impossibility of having absolute silence, because we, if we are alive, we are sources of sound, right? In fact, I'm very glad that you pointed out this example, because John Cage himself, he experimented being in an anechoic chamber, that is, as you very clearly explained, a room where the walls are absorbing all possible sounds. And he could still hear his heart beating, he could hear the blood running through his veins, he could even hear his own nervous system. So that's why he came to the conclusion that there's no such thing as an empty space or an empty time. There is always something to see, something to hear. Try as we may to make silence, we cannot. Okay? So, I think we're ready to comment on the aims for this lesson. What are we going to cover during this hour? Well, first of all, I would like to increase your awareness of how we use language when we describe sounds. I also want to cover sound waves. What are sound waves? How do we produce them? And I will give you some specific examples. And then we will talk about the relationship between objective and subjective properties of sound waves. So this is a music lesson, but it's very much linked to physics and acoustics, which you may love or not. I hope that you will love it by the end of this. So I'm going to give you a first task. We will do this in pairs, but to start off with, I will give you this handout. We are going to listen to 4 sounds. And basically what I want you to do is to give me a possible description of this sound. How would you describe each of these sounds? Okay? You can make notes in your handout, and after we listen to the 4 sounds, I will put you in pairs and we will discuss our ideas and see if we agree. Okay, so how would you describe this first sound? All you have to do is to listen attentively and write down your ideas, okay? We're not going to comment on anything until the end. First sound. Okay? Jot down your ideas.
We have to write in English, and if last time we write down in English.
I would use English all the time, yeah. You need to listen to it again? Let's listen to it once more. Okay, let's go on to our second sound. How would you describe this sound? Okay, once more. Okay, let's listen to our third sound. Third and final sound, okay? We're just going to do 3. Let's listen to it again. So do you have some ideas for each of those sounds? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes so that you can discuss in pairs your ideas. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have you found different ways of describing those sounds? I'll give you just a couple of minutes to discuss. And then we will share some of those ideas. And use English as much as possible. We're not doing that. Okay, I see that you're ready. So let's share some of those ideas. What about you? What did you think about that first sound? How would you describe it?
The first sound, we said that it's a pair of high notes, high flute notes.
Okay.
The first one goes higher. The second one goes higher than the first.
And they are very long sound.
And they are very long.
Okay, so a pair of long sounds, long flute sounds. One is higher than the other. Did you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, basically?
Yes.
Okay. What would you say about the second sound? How would you describe that second sound?
Cambia a motor of something electronic, like a projector or
Air conditioner.
Yeah, so we're thinking about a motor,
Yes.
maybe air conditioning, ventilation system.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any more ideas concerning that second sound?
Well, we can fire in this one because I think it's a mechanic sound, and I wrote down that it maybe can be from a ventilation system.
Mm-hmm.
And Claudia said that it's
A truck or a car sound. The car is still, but it is functioning.
Okay, so it's actually a car maybe, ventilation system. Okay, okay, so we have different ideas concerning that second sound. What about the third sound? Anyone?
ambulance,
Yes.
leitmotiv.
Sorry?
Ambulance,
Yeah, and
leitmotiv.
an ambulance. I didn't get that.
Leitmotiv en plan.
Leitmotiv.
Leitmotiv de la ambulance.
Okay. You have used an interesting term, yeah. So it's like the typical sound that an ambulance makes. Any more ideas concerning that third sound?
it's the same. We said that it's the main character. The main character is the ambulance in the traffic.
Okay, interesting. The main character. So you're imagining that ambulance stuck in the traffic, and we hear that annoying siren. Okay. So I want to point out some very interesting things that you have commented on these sounds. I think that you will agree with me that very frequently you have referred to objects that are producing the sounds. When describing these sounds, you have named motors, ambulance, air conditioning. You have mentioned the sources of the sound. This is what we refer to as source-cause descriptions. If I were to ask you to describe this chair, it would be unusual for you to tell me about how it was produced. You would describe it saying, well, it's an object it's a green object that has these components, so and so. You would not go on and tell me how it was manufactured, how it was produced. However, when we describe sound, we tend to identify the sources. Where does that sound come from? Any idea why we tend to do this when we describe sound? Do you think it's helpful?
Yes, because then we know where it came from, and then we can, situarnos
Okay.
in the space and in the sound,
Yeah, okay. So we can get acquainted with our surroundings, and we can react
Yes.
to those sounds. So anthropologists have actually studied this and have come to the conclusion that it helps us with our survival. Thanks to these source-cause descriptions, we can actually know how to react to sounds. We know if we should run away, or if we should stay still, or whatever. Sometimes we use musical elements if we have that previous knowledge. You have identified a flute because you have that knowledge. Okay? And often we also use metaphors. You had, Alejandro talked about a higher sound and a lower sound. High and low refers to space, but we also use this metaphor to talk about sounds that are higher in pitch or lower in pitch. Okay? So, there are some very interesting things concerning how we describe sound. However, how would you define sound? If you had to provide a definition of what sound is, how would you explain what sound is to a child? What would you say?